Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel tonight. I'm bringing you something truly unsettling. These are not legends, not rumors, and not fictional campfire tales. What you're about to hear are 10 of the scariest true stories of 2025 events reported by real people from different parts of the world that left lasting scars on those who lived through them. Each story unfolds quietly at first, ordinary moments turning terrifying without warning. So dim the lights, get comfortable, and listen carefully, because every story you're about to hear really happened. The first story comes from a night shift security guard in Ohio. His job was simple: watch the surveillance monitors of an empty corporate office building after midnight. The building had been shut down for months due to renovations, so no one was supposed to be inside. Around 2:17 a.m., one of the motion sensors triggered on the third floor. He assumed it was a glitch. Those happened often. But when he checked the camera feed, he saw a man standing perfectly still in the hallway, facing the camera. The man didn't blink. He didn't move. He just stared directly into the lens. The guard picked up the radio and called out, asking the man to identify himself. No response. When he switched to another camera to get a better angle and then back again, the man was gone. Moments later, motion sensors triggered on every floor at once, like footsteps running up and down the building. The guard fled the control room and waited outside until morning. When police searched the building, they found no one, but on one of the hallway walls, smeared in dust, were the words "You saw me." The second story took place on a long haul train crossing Eastern Europe. A solo traveler documented her journey on social media, posting updates late into the night. Around 3 a.m., she wrote that a man had been standing in the corridor outside her compartment for over 20 minutes. She could see his shadow beneath the door. She assumed he was drunk or lost. When she finally opened the door to confront him, the corridor was empty, but her compartment door wouldn't close properly afterward. That's when she noticed scratch marks around the handle, deep and frantic, as if someone had tried desperately to get in from the outside. At the next station, she reported it to railway staff. They reviewed the security footage and found something chilling. For nearly half an hour, a tall figure stood outside her door, unmoving, with its face pressed so close to the camera that the image distorted. There were no visible facial features, just darkness where a face should have been. The third story comes from a small town in Australia, where emergency services received repeated calls from the same abandoned farmhouse. Each call contained nothing but heavy breathing and a faint child's voice whispering, "He's back." Police eventually traced the calls and searched the property. The house had been abandoned for more than a decade after a violent incident involving a missing family. Inside, officers found dozens of old cell phones scattered across the floor, all still functional, all connected to emergency services. None of them had active service plans. One officer later reported hearing footsteps on the second floor, despite confirming no one else was present. When they exited the house, every phone began ringing at once. The fourth story happened in a quiet apartment building in South Korea. A woman noticed that her smart door lock kept recording unlock attempts at exactly 4:04 a.m. Every night, the app showed someone entering the correct code, but she had never shared it. Changing the code didn't help. The attempts continued, always at 4:04. One night, she stayed awake to confront whoever it was. At exactly 4:04, the handle slowly turned from the outside. She screamed and called the police. When officers reviewed the lock's video log, they froze. The footage showed the door unlocking from the inside. The fifth story comes from a rural highway in Texas. A couple driving home late at night saw a woman standing barefoot on the side of the road, waving for help. When they stopped and asked if she needed assistance, she looked up and her eyes were completely clouded white. She asked them in a calm voice if they could drive her back to where it happened. Before they could respond, she suddenly sprinted into the darkness. Minutes later, their car radio cut to static, and a distorted voice repeated their license plate number again and again. They didn't stop driving until sunrise. Later, they learned that a fatal hit and run had occurred on that same stretch of road 1 year earlier, involving a woman whose eyes were damaged in the crash. The sixth story involves a viral video from 2025 that disappeared almost as quickly as it appeared. A group of urban explorers broke into an abandoned hospital scheduled for demolition. In their footage, everything seemed normal: dusty hallways, rusted equipment, until one of them pointed the camera down a stairwell. At the bottom stood a hospital bed, freshly made, with a blood-stained sheet. As they whispered nervously, a heart monitor began beeping somewhere below them. The sound grew faster and louder. When they ran, one of the explorers tripped. The camera captured a final image of a tall figure in surgical clothing, standing at the top of the stairs, watching silently. Authorities later confirmed the hospital had been completely stripped of equipment years earlier. No heart monitors remained inside the building. The seventh story comes from a family who installed cameras in their home to monitor their elderly grandmother with dementia. One night, motion alerts went off in the living room. When they checked the feed, they saw their grandmother sitting on the couch, talking to someone just off camera. She kept smiling and nodding, responding as if in conversation. At one point, she said, "I told you not to come back." Then her expression changed to fear. The camera shifted slightly, triggered by movement. For a split second, a second silhouette appeared beside her, taller than any member of the family, with arms that seemed too long. The feed cut out immediately. When the family rushed into the living room, their grandmother was alone, shaking, repeating the same sentence over and over. "He stood where your father died." The eighth story happened to a delivery driver in Japan who worked late, night routes. He accepted an order from an address that didn't appear on GPS. The instructions were detailed and specific, guiding him down narrow streets until he reached a small, unlit house. The porch light turned on as he approached, but no one answered the door. When he checked the delivery app, the order status had changed to completed, even though he hadn't delivered anything. As he turned to leave, his phone received a message from the customer. "Why did you bring him with you?" Terrified, he drove straight to a police station. His dashcam footage later showed a figure sitting in his back seat for nearly the entire drive. He insists no one was there when he got in the car. The ninth story comes from a remote hiking trail in Norway. A solo hiker posted frequent updates until her messages suddenly stopped. Search teams found her tent intact, food untouched, phone powered on. The last video on her phone showed her whispering into the camera, saying someone had been calling her name from the trees using her own voice. Just before the video ended, a voice behind her said, clearly and calmly, "Why are you filming me?" The case remains unsolved. The 10th and final story is perhaps the most disturbing. In early 2025, a man reported receiving daily voicemails from his own number. Each message was time-stamped several hours in the future. The voicemails started harmless, ambient noise, distant traffic, but gradually became more urgent. In the final message, his own voice was crying, begging him not to go into his apartment that night. Panicked, he called the police and waited outside his building. Hours later, residents reported screams coming from his apartment. Officers forced the door open and found signs of a violent struggle, but no body. The man who reported the voicemails was never seen again. His phone was found in his pocket at the scene, still recording, as if waiting to send one final message. These were 10 of the scariest true stories of 2025, moments where reality crossed into something darker, something we still don't fully understand. Whether you believe these events can be explained or not, one thing is certain: the people who experienced them will never forget what they saw, what they heard, or what followed them home in the dark. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. If these stories sent chills down your spine, make sure to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Until next time, stay safe, stay alert, and remember, some true stories are far more frightening than fiction.